King Misuzulu, Zwelithini, KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala and a billionaire businessman Patrice Motsepe are visiting the Tshelimnyama area west of Durban to assess the extent of the flood damage. They're now briefing the media. Let's take you live there now.
Our religious leaders, traditional leaders, as well as our government, we will work together to make sure that we help the community in this area that's been affected by floods.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Nzosalise Nqhubeka. Ngicele ukuthi esikhathini samanje sihloniphe sonke, sidedele isilo ukuthi sikhulume, sidlulise amazwi aso kubantu balapha eNazareth, but kubantu bakwaZulu-Natal bonke, futhi namazwi kubahlobo abathe babona kufanele ukuthi balule isandla. Wena wendlovu, wena wendlovu, bayede silo samaba.
Ngithokoza kakhulu ndunankulu wesifunda ubaba Zikalala. Ngithokoza kakhulu umeya yeTheku. Ngithokoza kakhulu umama uNkosazane, umalume uMadlamini. Ngithokoza kakhulu kubaba uMagayi uNdosi oyena obhekelele ezokuphepha okumsebenzi wakhe namhlanje ngoba sihlangene nje. Ngithokoze kakhulu, ngiphakamise futhi negalelo elikhulu ubaba uMotsepe nomama uPatrice behamba bezobambisana kanye nathi lena besilo isizwe sibhekene nefu elimnyama, okusho ukuthi isimo masifana nalesi siyake ngokwesintu sethu samaZulu kuyake kuhlanganiswe namakhanda. Ngithokoza kakhulu kuyo futhi iMotsepe Foundation endala lapha ekhaya ekade inguyama isilo esingizalayo esebuzile, sikwazile ukuthi ngalokho iminyaka eminingi ukuthi emsondeze eduze nefoundation yakhe ubaba uMotsepe ekuyona esebenzela, futhi ikwazi ukuthi njenge NGO iyakwazi ukuthi ingenelele nala uhulumeni engakwazi ukuthi angenelele khona ngokubambisana nohulumeni nabaholi bendabuko esifundeni. Ngithokoza kakhulu nina besilo uma sihlangene kanjena, ngoba kusho khona ukuhlangana futhi nokuhlanganisa ukuze izinto zilunge. Sithintekile, sishaqekile sonke, kubuhlungu. Sithi sikhuluma nje njengamanje kunabantu abasacingwa abangakatholakala. Uthi uma ubheka isimo sesibalo esiphezulu kakhulu esishaqisayo ukuthi awu, ngoba siyazi ngokwesintu sethu ukuthi imvula iyake be isibusiso, kodwa sibona ngathi siqalekisiwe kulokhu, okusho ukuthi futhi sikhona lapho kumele ukuthi uNkulunkulu owumdali, umnikazi wezinto zonke, kubalekile ukuthi sikhuleke kuyena sibuze ukuthi asikhanyisele ukuthi hawu ifeli ngaka ubuhlungu bungaka senzeni kwaZulu, ngoba leli zulu nina besilo libonisile ukuthi mningi umonakalo owenzekile. Nosomabhizinisi bathintekile ngendlela abathinteke ngayo. Lelifu elivelele lapha esifundeni kusho khona ukuthi kumele ukuthi sivule amehlo sicabange ukuthi impilo ibheke phi lapha esiya khona. Ngithokoza kakhulu iMotsepe Foundation ekade yafika lapha ekhaya ebuye isebenze ngawo amanzi ukuthi imiphakathi engenayo amanzi uwafakile amabhoholo la adrilla khona ngokubambisana nomama uPatrice. Sikuthokozela kakhulu ukuthi akusha lokho akwenzayo. uhleze seduze umhlobo wethu umhlobo walapha ekhaya ngithokoza kakhulu isandla aselulile ukulekelela isizwe sikaMageba ngalokho ngiyacela futhi ngiyanxusa ngithi asemcela uNkulunkulu ukuthi abantu abafana naye ubaba uMtsipe ukuthi abagcine beze nabanye ngoba emkhulu kangaka nje ubaba uMtsipe ehamba umhlaba wonke akasilandele nabanye abazombambisa ngoba into yesizwe ngeke awenze wonke lo msebenzi omkhulu kangaka eyedwa okusho ukuthi kumele ukuthi simbambise kodwa ngiyacela bakwethu ngoba siyalibona leli izulu ukuthi ingathi linombuya liyabuya okusho ukuthi wonke umuntu akaqaphele indaba yokuya emifuleni nasemihosheni njengamanje kuyingozi ibhlungu into umuzwa ukuthi kunabantu kwezinye indawo la belinde khona ihlobo zabo ukuthi ihlobo zabo bayakhuleka ukuthi umfula zehle babathole ngezansi leyo nto le ishaqisa kakhulu ibhlungu ngakho ke ngithi njengengonyama njengesilo phakathi kwesizwe asikhuleke sibike nakwabadala sishweleze la kufanele sishweleze khona sibambisane nebesilo kodwa konke ngithokoza kakhulu ukuthi sonke sibambisene ngibonge kakhulu kumeya weTheku ngoba konke lokhu baba ukhawunda kusemahlombe akho ngokubambisana nazo zonke izinhlelo njengoba ubaba uPatrice ake wabika nje ukuthi sekulungiswe ikomiti elizoqondana ngqo nezimo ezifana nalezi sasingazi ukuthi kuyosifica lokhu kuhlupheka kodwa ngoba sekufikile ngiyakhuleka kithi sonke njengoba sihlangene nje amabandla amasonto ngithokoza kakhulu onyazini lwezulu unyazi uShembe naye uthintekile ngendlela ukuthi uyinkosi yamaNazaretha naye siyamkhalela sikhalelana sonke simunye uma isimo sinje kumele siqoqane sibambane kakhulu kunayizona ngalokho ngiyakhuleka nina besilo futhi ngiyacela ukuthi
Right, we seem to have lost connection with that, but that is basically the delegation in KZN after the Motsepe Foundation has donated 30 million rands to affected communities in KwaZulu-Natal. Of course, those devastating floods killing scores of people, lots more missing, damaging infrastructure, etc. Founders Patrice Motsepe as well as Dr. Precious Motsepe have, together with King Misuzulu, Zwelithini and Premier Sihle Zikalala, briefed the media. But let's take you back now. We see that we have established connection.
Nje ukuthi babukhansela umbomvu asibongele bongele egameni lomphakathi ukuthi ubuholi bufikile lapha endaweni ayiholayo adlulisa amazwi okubonga. Siyabonga mbongo.
Wena wendlu bayede
Siyabonga babusilo sibonge undunankulu wakwaZulu-Natal sibonge ubaba umeya yaseThekwini sibonge ubaba uPatrice Motsepe no Dr. Motsepe ukuthi bafike endaweni yakithi KwaZulu-Natal bezosilekelela ngeyinkinga esibe nazo ngalemvula enkulu ene kangaka. Sibonga kakhulu, sithi ukubonga kwethu nje sibonga ngayo yonke into abazosilekelela ngayo. Sinemndeni ke u21 edlulelwe ihlobo kwalimali imizi engaphezulu kuka 500. Imigwaqo eminingi ivalekile ayisebenzi, amanzi nogesi thintekile nako. Kodwa siyacela emphakathini waseThekwini ukuthi abantu abalako 4 million akubulula ukulungisa inkinga ngesikhathi esisodwa, kodwa uhulumeni uawe uyazama ukuthi lezi inkinga esibhekene nazo sidlule kuzona. Siyabonga kakhulu bamme.
Siyabonga mbongo, siyabonga kakhulu. Sizocela ke ukuthi ubuholi ngoba kusenemibuzo imide engasibe nayo sizokwazi ukuthi sidedele isilo sivule indlela nje lapho sizodlula ngapha emndenini ukunyakazisa nje babingelela emndeni ehlezi phansi la sikwazi ukudlula ke siyophuma ngale sizocela senze kanjalo ke sicela imedia iye lapha ngasemnyango bese siya
Okay, but just stay on the visuals, okay?
Well, that just concluded that briefing. Motsepe Foundation donating 30 million rands to affected communities in KwaZulu-Natal. At the moment, they are visiting the Tshelimnyama area, which is west of Durban, to assess the extent of the flood damage. Many regions, of course, in KZN, 10 to be exact, have been battered by the recent torrential rains and mudslides in the province. Just close to 400 people have lost their lives. We understand scores more are missing. Rescue operations and rescue missions are still continuing in the province. And of course, there are warnings of more rains that will batter the province this weekend. And as we've heard there earlier, King Misuzulu Zwelithini, who thanked the foundation for its donation, calling on everybody to work together because this is a tragedy. It is a disaster, as he's called it. Also, cautioning residents and community members to say that weather conditions are still not favorable. People need to take shelter. Those that are living in low-lying areas need to somehow evacuate as soon as possible. Of course, the founders of the Motsepe Foundation, Mr. Patrice Motsepe, as well as Dr. Precious Motsepe, also saying a few words there together with the Premier Sihle Zikalala, as well as eThekwini Mayor Kawunda, who have also addressed the media. There you see the delegates making their way through to assess the area, and we understand there will be a Q&A with the media a little bit later on. But there are several organizations in the province landing their hand, since the floods started in KZN on Monday evening. We know that the Gift of the Givers has been in the area donating much needed essentials. We also know that the Red Cross is there, and several churches and schools have also lent their hand. Community members are still helping rescue officials, just to search for those family members that have still gone missing and have not been located. Let's listen in now to our journalist, Nozintombi Mia.
Minutes ago, we do know that Dr. Patrice Motsepe and Dr. Precious Motsepe just donated 30 million rands to assist affected communities and affected families, and I have them here with me now. Thank you so much, Dr. Motsepe. You've been doing a walkabout the whole day today. What were you seeing? What was the extent of destruction that you saw?
Well, there's lots of problems and lots of pain, and so many families have really been devastated by what we saw today. And what we thought was to make a humble donation from the Motsepe Foundation, and of course the need is huge, but there's a lot of good work that has been done by various constituencies. We came here primarily as a result of the many years partnerships we've had with religious and faith-based organizations, and also in particular with the royal family and the traditional leaders.
Yeah.
And His Majesty King Misuzulu is really leading this process with various traditional leaders and with our religious and faith-based organizations. The urgency is to let this committee, as a matter of urgency, to distribute the 30 million rand in those areas that they have identified with the communities and with the people on the ground. They know where the emergencies are and the priorities, but so they will guide us. The issue for us is to start distributing that money as quickly as possible.
In terms of oversight, you did say that you're going to have a committee that will be assisting with the oversight of that. I mean, what we saw from early this morning, communities don't have beds, they don't have clothes, they don't have a hot meal, they don't have bread. Water is still a long-term consideration. They don't have basics such as bread.
I want to thank you, SABC, for really making the rest of all of us in the country aware of the dire need. And so the committee, we've asked them to sit as quickly as possible, because the fortunate aspect as well is that we don't have these bureaucratic delays and red tapes, which in some instances are there for various reasons, for compliance. In our case, we really need, based on what we saw today, beds, and in fact, the request we've also received is to help those who've lost their family members, that we should make some of this money available urgently so that they can put them to rest and
give them a
dignified. So they will guide us, because there was a suggestion we should give all of those families that have lost their loved ones 20,000 rand so that they can move on. We are going to be guided by the committee, because it's got religious leaders, it's got representatives of traditional communities and leadership led by His Majesty, as I said, and various other stakeholders. And of course the government, the Premier and the Mayor have also appointed people to be part of that committee.
Dr. Precious, I saw you nodding as we spoke about the issue of a hot meal. That was something that was quite close to your heart that you spoke about a bit earlier.
Yes, it's very difficult, particularly, in this venue that's housing its majority women and children. We know that in crises like this, it's usually women and children who suffer most. So, unfortunately, the inequalities that have already been there because, prior to COVID even, exacerbated by COVID pandemic, and now made worse by this crisis with the flooding. So where we went with Mr. Motsepe, some of the places you can't even access because the roads have just collapsed. Now think about the people who are trapped on that side with no access to supplies, to basic food, water, such basic necessities. Their homes have been totally, broken down, destroyed. So there is a lot of devastation out here, and we were able to witness that ourselves firsthand.
Before I let you go, I know that a lot of media want to speak to you. We just want to quickly touch on the issue of the impact that climate change is having in real time, and this is what we're seeing, the effect of climate change. What measures do you think we can put in place as civil society, NGOs? Government is doing what they can, long term, medium term, but what do you think we can do? Let me start with you.
Yes, I think, this comes to show us that climate change is real. And we all have to do something to ensure that future generations can survive the calamity and the destruction that we will foresee. From government side, of course, they have there's policies that's been set in place, funds that have been set in place. Yesterday, I witnessed a subcommittee that was set aside by government to look into issues of climate change. People that have serious knowledge in terms of how we prevent. But driving around today, what comes to mind is people should not be building in places that are so fragile, where the soil, the foundation is not solid. When we relocate people now, we hopefully should be taking them to places that we will not have this devastation again. And then the infrastructure that is being planned, we need to be thinking long term, that it was infrastructure that will withstand any form of natural disaster, to a certain extent, that should happen. But I think climate change is a reality, and everybody should be aware and take active interest in what they can do to mitigate it.
You know, that's a very, very important issue you raised, because the consequences of neglect of climate over many years have been with us for some time and will be with us for many, many years to come. But it is always the poor that suffers the most. It is always the marginalized that suffers the most. It's always those who are excluded. And the flood is a reflection, just like COVID was, that we really need to implement measures long term, and of course in partnership, because the government cannot do it on its own. No government in the world can implement the appropriate measures, whether it's to deal with the impact of climate change and the consequences of climate change, or whether it is COVID-19, or whether it's the floods that we are experiencing today. So we really have to put in measures long term, and of course climate change is a global challenge, and it's usually, as I said, it's the developing countries, it is the poor countries, and it is the poor communities in those countries. And but I'm confident that the government have really taken the right steps, and we will have challenges like we had with the floods, and in other parts of the world it is drought, and that's why we need to work together, all the constituencies, with government, the private sector, with local communities, and make sure that the most vulnerable amongst us are least impacted and don't suffer the consequences that we saw today as a result of the floods.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it there with both of you. We're going to walk back inside the community hall to give you a further idea of what it is looking like. It is a little bit dark inside. We're going to try and speak to some of the people here. Hi, Mama, how are you? Have you been at the community hall since the flooding started?
Yes.
And what has it been like?
It looks like sad. People, they was crying there. There was no food, no clothes to dress.
Yeah.
They got nothing.
They've got nothing.
Even me.
Yeah.
If I tell you.
Yeah.
My house is still now got water inside, running like a river, you see.
Yes.
I don't know what can I say, but it's not.
It's sheer destruction.
The other house for my daughter is like what you call the dagger is right on the roof.
Oh, you mean the mud is right at the top of the roof?
Yes.
So they're basically, it's almost like they're trapped inside, yes.
Even the finish looks like broken.
Yeah.
We don't know how it's going on when the sun come.
Yeah.
When the sun come, maybe lots of houses will get full.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Of course.
So before I let you go, Mama, just tell me, what are some of the basic things that you guys need here in this Nazareth Community Hall? What are some of the basic things you need assistance with now?
We got no electricity. The road is closed. Everything is closed. Everything. We got no water. We can't use even toilets. It's so sad. I don't know, Mommy, what can I say to you?
It's devastating. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you, Mama Thamsongo. Thank you very much. I see there's also another lady just behind you also wants to speak. Just quickly tell me, what do you need? What are the most important things you need?
No, I don't need nothing, but I need money.
You can speak in Zulu, my darling.
Okay. Ngizocela usizo lokuthi indlu yami iwile if umasipala engangisiza ukuthi phinde ivuke.
Okay. All right, Mama, and you?
Yes. Yebo ngiselo ngadilikelwa umuzi ngo2019 kuze bemanje awukaze wakhiwe sekuphinde futhi kwadilika omunye futhi uyalenga uround ngihleli kona khona ulenga unjalo kunomgodi omkhulu amanzi asinawo abantu bashonile ngale asikwazi ukusizakala. Ngiyabonga.
So what do you need? What are the most important things you need? What do you need?
Sicela ukwakhelwa izindlu.
All right. Okay.
Namanzi.
All right.
Nemgwaqo.
Thank you so much, Mama. We're going to leave it there.
thing?
Studio, we're going to hand back to you. It is quite a bit of a crush. We would have liked to go inside the community hall, but it is completely dark because there's no electricity and there is no water. But obviously the sense that you're getting from some of the community members that we just spoke to now, you know, they're calling for assistance, they're calling for help. You know, they want basics such as food and water. You know, they do understand the long-term implications of access to proper housing and whatnot. But, you know, when we spoke to to Dr. and Dr. Motsepe, what they said was that infrastructure needs to be rebuilt correctly. And once the people who are living on these, you know, the side of the mountain or in these places that are not quite firm ground places, they should be reallocated or removed to places where they will be less vulnerable to the impact of nature and to the impact of climate change. Studio, we're going to leave it there and we're going to hand back to you.